Hi, and welcome back to our second segment of the show, the Dave Emmons Show. And I have Dr. James Yoghadi Weldon on the show, and he's been with me before. He's kind of like more of a co-host instead of a guest. I can call him that. We're syndicating through WDY Radio, and that's Odyssey Radio in Maryland, and it's Odyssey Radio live, and it's this live.com. I'm sorry, but live.com. And you can hear the audio portion of that. We'll be putting out the video portion on other social media like LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble is the sites that I usually go to. The other one don't allow you to go too much, like this Truth Society. That's Trump's website. They only allow 10 minutes on a video, so that doesn't give me much time to work on that one. But Dr. James Yoghadi Weldon, I asked you about Avatar a while ago, and I forgot to mention that during the off-the-air thing. Avatar, they said it was a Vishnu is what the Avatar was in India, and the Avatar movie that we saw, there's actually an Avatar 2 now that's out, and it's actually like a body or some kind of holographic thing that comes out and does things, or I guess out in the real world or whatever, another dimension. And people have been talking to me about this dimensional abduction where they take your spirit, your energy, and that's happened to me because my body has went frozen. Matter of fact, it's coming up due time in this next following week that I might get another visit. I mean, people might think this guy's crazy, but no, really, your body goes cold, your energy, your soul, and your consciousness goes to another dimension like an avatar and like a hologram. And that's how they look at you and read your mind and your consciousness and all of this stuff. But you have any last notes on Avatar on that issue, Dr. Weldon?
Well, the words mean what you think they mean. So you could say that there definitely are high beings who have achieved a united, free state, infinite state, who are living an immortal existence, who decide to come back and do work in the world. Just like, we're going to be ejected out of this body. I'm in my 70s and I've got a few years left. Might be 30 years, might be 20 years, who knows? Something could happen tomorrow. But when we leave, we go to the next subtle plane, and this death thing is not a big deal. It's another reason why you really need to learn to practice this meditation, which takes you down that pathway. We teach these things, and these organizations I'm associated with make those available. They can be done online anywhere in the world. And my site, greatworldwisdom.com, is a place that you can check that stuff out if you're curious and see more of my videos. My entire life is an open book. So there are very super high beings who are connected to the oneness that have very advanced spiritual and psychic capabilities. And they're known mostly in the East because we've been through a dark time for the last 5,000 years or so.
Right.
And most of the high beings are in the subtler planes. They're not physically embodied, but right now there are huge numbers of high beings in this world. And again, that class of being is, much more rare. And I was lucky enough to be taught by 3 very high enlightened beings throughout my life and sent from one teacher to another. And so we're trying to do the work. Mm-hmm. So there really are such beings, and it's good to be around and with them. You can listen to the videos, but it's not the same thing as being there in the presence, because that high energy somehow imbibes you. We're like little magnets, and all of our magnetic properties are not aligned. Mm-hmm. And by the meditation practice, breathing techniques, and all the advanced things that are taught through some of these groups, this organization, the Art of Living Foundation, is the biggest one now pretty much in the world. NGOs doing this multicultural, multi-faith, and they can take you into that space, and it's good to hang out from time to time and to be with such beings, because we will pick that up. And will be transformed just by the presence and the energy. I mean, that's one of the things that happened with Jesus. He healed people just by being there.
Right. Dr. James, I saw a show the other night on UFO Witness, and I know I'm throwing this in, but there's meditation involved. There's a guy who had an abduction, and actually it was kind of like a dimensional abduction. Like I was telling you a while ago, they take your energy, your soul, your consciousness, and they take it to another dimension, and your body goes really cold, frozen. This guy, they wrapped him up with some brain reading instruments and his heart rate and everything, and they found out when he went into meditation, he was for real. I mean, his body was actually telling them, what was going on. And he went into meditation, and he was telling them how he went to another dimension. And they found it fascinating that there are abductions that people don't know about. And actually you're being taken, your body is left behind and everything else is taken forward. Of course, your body is nothing but dust. We leave that behind.
No, your body, consciousness is not in the body. The body is in consciousness.
Okay.
And our next body above this one is the life force of the prana level. And it's kind of like water, and in that place we can flow, and we think of something in our mind and we see it. We can see it. And this is what happens when people pass, but that's not the highest plane. There's another level within us, which is our mind. Mm-hmm. I ask you, think of your childhood when you're 5 years old. What do? It's just like the computer system. It goes back and it looks up that memory, hopefully, if it's accessible, and you see those things. So there's a plane associated with light. Okay. And that is the plane of mind. And the field of mind is bigger. It's bigger. So physical body is this big. The energetic body is bigger, the prana body. The mind body is bigger, even bigger than that. And then in the mind, higher than the mind, is the intellect. So there's something in you that's going, yes, no, I agree with this, I don't agree with this. Maybe the people listening are going, this guy is batty.
they think all of us.
We're talking about these things that can't be real. It's only, it is, if it isn't your experience, it's not. So there's an intellect, and that's saying, yes, no, I agree, I don't agree, I understand, I don't agree. It's like a funnel. And if you say no, you close the windows to that, and then no understanding happens.
Right.
So it's really important to come to this with an open. There's the intellect, and then there's a shell around your infinity called the ego. The ego is literally like the egg of a shell, and it's a high level of existence, and it keeps you in your individuality. With no ego, you would just be connected with the space. And there's intellect.
Yeah, isn't ego
above that is the divine self. Many levels to that too. So
ego is one of the 7 sins. It's like anger and all this other stuff. And is that bad? The ego?
Is it bad to have a shell around a chicken egg?
No,
it is. If you're ready to come out of that,
right?
But before that, it's totally protective. So that's in a certain sense connected with our individual sense of who and what we are. You think you're a human being, you think that we're having this conversation, and that you're an individual life, I'm an individual life, you're living in this little box of your body all your life, thoughts are going on somehow in your head, you're seeing through the eyes, but the senses are beyond that. There are senses beyond the physical body. So enlightenment, one of the first stages of enlightenment, by the way, that Jesus went through, is the ability to be beyond that. Okay. And he broke that shell in his lifetime, where he was able to be one with the cosmic reality. Time, there's a bubble. This universe is a bubble. When you look at it in all the research that they've done,
right,
it's a bubble. But what's on the other side of that bubble? Beyond that, beyond time, space, there existence is still there. It's not so you can actually become one with that, and the degree that you're able to be one with that, you can do these things consciously instead of having to have an alien kind of take you out. So sometimes people need a little inspiration, And these cosmic beings come in and make those things happen. Now, you need to understand that at a certain level, anything you think about, you can experience. Now, whether it's accurate or not, that's a total different story. You can say, okay, I've got a storage chest in my right up here. Can your consciousness go in there and see all the things that are in there? Can you go into somebody else's house and say, okay, I'll tell you what's in the drawer. You can verify this for yourself. It's not for showboating. It's for verifying that the intuitive capability is correct. And by the way, this organization, the Art of Living, has trained over 100,000 kids that can do those things. It's easier for children. So we have children in this intuition course that they teach, which can ride bicycles. Blind kids that were blind from birth, they can ride bicycles down the street.
That's
people that can play
yeah.
computer games, totally blindfolded, can read things on a board across the room, can actually read a book. This is really true. Can read a book that someone else opens in the room. We saw this recently, and they open the book and they hold it up and the kid starts reading from the page or starts describing the written materials or the cartoons or whatever it is in this book.
So parents, if they want to send their children to this, maybe a summer camp, is that what you have there at the spiritual center?
We have the courses they teach. It has to be, those particular courses need to be done in residence. And they happen 2 or 3 times the world, but there are centers teaching this in, I don't know, 100 countries around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something like 30, 40,000 teachers. We're recruiting teachers, by the way. If you would like to be a teacher of this stuff, if you're a practitioner in any field at all, really, psychologists, doctors do it, MDs do it, chiropractors do it, but regular people that are healers that are just interested in this are becoming teachers. And you can look at the Art of Living.
How about a host BSer? No,
and but, you can take the training. We're going to add another, I don't know, 5,000 teachers in the United States this year. And then next year, we're going to have a huge event in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
On the, where the big lake is there. We're going to have, I don't know, maybe 100,000 people there, and people from all over the world come.
Yeah, we need to put
basically
that on.
Celebrate peace. We're standing up for peace right now.
Right.
We're not opposing the people that are causing problems.
Right.
And there's a place for that, to oppose them.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have the military, just like you have to have the immune system in the body.
Right.
And when the disease, when you were sick last week, your immune system was trying to clean that stuff up. And there are natural things and holistic things, but also medicines that can help assist that process. Yeah. There's a place for all of that.
And when your soul gets older, it's kind of hard to throw that stuff off as quick.
Well, the body is going to eject you someday.
Right.
That's one thing you can guarantee.
Right.
This body is going to kick you out.
Yeah.
Whether that experience is lovely and beautiful. By the way, I've had a number of friends that have passed.
Right.
And I've had the ability to go into that realm, and some of them, have shown me what happened. And when they have an advancement in consciousness, when they practice this, going into their inner being, going into the self, the divine self, it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. You open your door, you step out, and you're in that cosmic space, and friends are there, loved ones are there. It's not a big trial and tribulation. But if you're clinging on to it, oh, my money, my house, my this, my that. Mm-hmm. And we have old guys. Should tell the story about this old guy that came to him, and he's still fantasizing, about sex, and he's 90 years old. It ain't gonna happen, buddy.
Yeah.
He said, oh, I miss that, because that's the highest state of happiness that most people experience.
Right. And I want to lead you into the new project you have, the new book about Jesus Christ. There's a lot of naysayers right now, because they said, how come we haven't seen any miracles or anybody that comes forward and professes to be the second Jesus Christ or another prophet? They said, we don't see those miracles, so we don't believe in them. What's with that?
So if you measure the attainment in spirituality by being able to heal people, that's not a good measurement. You know, the churches are totally divided. They would never accept a person who came in and said, dun, 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 I'm the guy. They would never accept them. There's no possibility that they can't accept each other, and
Right.
and it's splintered in so many thousands of different ways. So I can actually tell you quite honestly here today, the person that was the incarnation of Jesus is in the world now and has actually been in the world quite some time. And by the way, it wasn't the last time that he came back. He's been in the world a number of times in the last 2,000 years. And they don't come in claiming things. I mean, Sri, many of the people think that he's an incarnation of one of these great cosmic beings. And I've seen him do unbelievable things to thousands of people around the world, all kinds of healings. But, you know, you just let the events speak for themselves. My story in the book that I wrote, on Jesus, the story behind the greatest story ever told, it's actually, second title is, I think it's going to be Memories from the Life of Jesus, because that's how I experienced it. And, you know, I had my own church when I was 13 years old, kids' church. We didn't study the Bible, but we prayed. Boy, did we pray. And we would cry out to God, and we would ask for deliverance, and we would cry out that he's left us alone and we're abandoned. You know, it was after my father passed, by the way, when I was young. And I saw him, I experienced him after he passed. So I wanted answers. And so there's a whole backstory of his life that the world doesn't know. You think that everything that happened in his life happened in those 2.5 years that's really recorded as the core in the Bible. It's not. He had a whole life before, and he had a whole life afterwards. And we know for sure that he was crucified. You can say that he did die, go up to heaven. He was with the Father, but he came back out, and there was a christening where that force, that divine force, came into his life in a very strong way. He became christened. So Jesus and Jesus, the christened one, were different. One was much more expanded and had this cosmic unity that happened with him. So their force went on about its job, and then Jesus couldn't stay around. I mean, we know that he came back out. We know that he survived. The Bible talks about that. And so where did he go? Did he just go poof, you know, and just turn into smoke? Live. And he went back actually and spent the rest of his life, actually a Jewish community in, so
Was
in
that
my case,
that was in northern India, right?
he was in the Kashmir region,
yeah.
and we know that Thomas came back to India. He went down south at the same school that Jesus was trained as when he was a child. He went to that area, and Bartholomew was there. All of this is actually well documented, and there's a lot of records of, you know, that Jewish community. And in my case, just like looking on the internet in the super high conscious state that I talked about earlier, Turiya, my teacher gave me the basic outline of what happened in his life, that he went to India and trained. 3 wise men told him to go to India to be trained. And he left when he was 13, and he spent the next 30 or so years in India. Then he came back to his home. There were some events. He was crucified. He did survive. And he went back to India and spent the rest of his life in India, and actually lived into his 80s. By the way, that name Jesus occurred only a few hundred years ago. The J part, Isa, and in some of the Islamic writings are there. Some of the Indian writings talked about there. And there's actually a town with white Kashmiris that have Jewish blood. And there's a place supposedly that he was buried. There's a BBC documentary on that, both by the country and by BBC. So there's more to his life than people suspect. He came in to do a job, right? So we came together to do this time, but the hour is just going to go by like that. He came in to bring grace and to take on the weight of the heavy karma. Main things that such beings do is they take it on, they accept, so that we don't have to go through stuff. So the rule of nature, as you know, quantum mechanics and physics, for every action there's an equal.
Right.
And so if we're really ancient and we've been around a lot of times, we made a lot of mistakes. So how do we get over all of that? Does that mean that every time or maybe we shot somebody or killed somebody, stabbed them or whatever, which we really have probably all done at certain times in the ancient past, do we got to live through those terrible nightmares? We don't. So that's the principle of grace. Now, Jesus was a being who was a manifestation of the principle of grace of nature. So nature has a grace principle. In the East, they call that beings that are living that gurus or sadgurus, or avatars, you know, and the angels take part of that role as well. And the grace principle basically says, okay, there's a game going on here and there's a real adventure story going on here. That's why my first book I wrote called The Secret Journey to the Enlightened Mind. And because we were all on that secret journey to living this state. And of course, the great majority of the people, you know, 90%, 95% have no idea that that's what's going on. And I said it in the beginning of that book, that's really the only thing happening in this life, because in a real sense.
Yeah, Dr. James, sometimes you're cutting in and out. I have to apologize to the viewers out there, but there's sometimes cutting in and out. We have to remind them that you're up in these mountains, and sometimes your connection sometimes gets cut, just like on your phone, and it's a hard time. But I wanted to ask you about Jesus, Dr. Weldon. Did he keep performing miracles and healings all the way up to his 80s?
Yes, he did. And there are stories of that actually in India. And there are stories of people that came from what is now Israel and traveled to that part of the world. There's a whole area up in Kashmir with a lot of the towns have some Jewish names. They're sending, even to this day, they're called the White Kashmiris mostly. And there's towns with Jewish names. There's that language up there has Jewish Hebrew words all mixed in. And there's evidence to that if people are willing to see that. And there's a place, and there's a burial crypt where he passed. It actually had a Muslim saint on top of it. So you can look at that for yourself. And I'm gonna eventually post a lot of that stuff connected with this greatworldwisdom.com app, and the one that's coming, Heavenly Mountain app. This is Heavenly Mountain. I live on Heavenly Mountain. So there will be an app for all of that for this local facility and what we're doing. So we're developing a community for people to live multicultural, multi-faith. My work is more involved in creating the bridges between the spiritual traditions.
Right. Now, your book on Jesus, I know a lot of people, I've been told by fundamentalists to be careful to cross the line with the Angel's book because I could be blaspheming. But a lot of people feel that way. And I think they really have to look at this world in a sense of reality, like you're looking at it, like with Jesus Christ going on and doing his thing. And
Jesus was crucified for blasphemy. That's why he was crucified.
Right.
He didn't commit any crimes. And basically he said, the Father and I are one. If you want to see and feel the Father, the divine Father, that was the model, and mother also, by the way, but it was a patriarchal society dominated by men. That's what they got him for. It wasn't against the law to say that. Okay. But that's the excuse that he was crucified for blasphemy. So anytime anybody says something, these big churches, the church, the whole story about what happened with the church, that all happened 350 years later.
Right.
When Constantine was fighting as one of the three Roman emperors to consolidate his power, there are three competing individuals. He collected together in a convocation the very small fledgling community, and they met, and they're basically two different philosophies. One was Paul or Saul, who had this very strong experience on the road to Damascus, and there was those the like of Mary Magdalene and the Essenes and some of the mystics, spiritual mystics. They basically said that this kingdom of heaven is within you, and it's a state of life. It's a state of consciousness. Right. They didn't understand consciousness back then at all, and it must be attained. So they selected Paul or Saul, and that's what he used to motivate the armies to go out. And so conversion happened at pain of death. You either say you believe, or we're going to kill you. And so there was a lot of murder Christianity in the very early days.
Right. Dr. Weldon, we're coming into the end of our 1 hour show. Could you tell everybody where to go to find out this information and the title of your new book that'll be coming out soon?
So you can go to my YouTube page, which all the episodes are there. Dr. James Weldon, Weldon. You can go there. You can also look at this greatworldwisdom.com site, which has the episodes of both of my books. My entire life is a completely open book. Everything from childhood, everything I passed through, I documented it. My life is a living biography of moving into this, what happened in childhood and the early church that I founded, and the spiritual adventure in many years that I spent, now 50 years, with these unbelievably great high beings around the world. Three major spiritual teachers that moved me on from one to one, and as I begin to learn more and more advanced things.
Right.
And also hear about this community that we're creating.
Dr. Weldon, I'm putting a synopsis or a short story about Jesus Christ, in which you just told us a little bit about. The book I know is going to be fascinating. I put a segment in my manuscript on this Angels and Watchers, and I'm going to footnote your name. Is that okay? Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay.
And it's now, the book is finished, all the episodes of his life up until the time and including the time that he traveled back to India and what happened, all in there.
Okay.
But you remember, it was 300 years later.
Yeah.
That all of that was compiled, and it was translated with people that had a certain bent, right? And the words could mean different things even now. And he didn't come into the world really to create a church like this. He came in to provide some love and relief and grace.
All right. We're at the end of our show, and my guest and actually co-host, Dr. James Yoghadi Weldon, and this is the Dave Emmons Show, and we're syndicated through the WODY Radio, and that's OdysseyRadioLive.com, and you can hear the audio portion on that, and we will put this out on the social media platforms in video. And thank you very much, Dr. Weldon, for being here, and good night, and we'll have another segment soon, and we'll keep this going, and we'll have different topics we'll bring up. Thank you very much, and good night.
Okay.